Well, let's move on to the week that was. And this past week, assuming you're not going anywhere, Barry, and you're staying very much in South Africa, there's a bit of easing there of lockdown levels, moving to level 3. Tell us all about it and what it means.
Yes, indeed, Chad. Last night, from time of recording, our President Cyril Ramaphosa came and gave a press conference and talked about the fact that South Africa is moving from level 4 down to level 3 from the 1st of June, which is about a week's time. So quite a big statement there. Of course, South Africa, like all other countries, is trying to find a way to slowly phase into normal life and not let everything go straight away and try and mitigate some of the risks of COVID spreading. And so level 4 to level 3 is actually quite a big jump if you look at some of the changes to the regulation. So let me run through a few of those for you. The first one is that you can now exercise at any time of day. So previously you only had a 6 to 9 window in the morning to run or to cycle, any of that stuff. Now you can exercise at any time of day as long as you maintain social distancing and all those good things. The second thing is that there's no more curfew. So the curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. is gone. And so that's a big deal, not just for personal freedom, but also for restaurants who've been unable to deliver dinners past 6 or 7 p.m. because their staff had to get home. So now the curfew is lifted. Those restaurants are now able to service customers into the actual dinner hours instead of ordering at 4 or 5 p.m.
Yeah.
The biggest one for Chad, or for a lot of South Africans, and one that's been a cause for huge celebration, is that alcohol can now be sold for home consumption. So that is a huge deal for a lot of South Africans. Obviously, the alcohol ban has been very controversial this side. And from the 1st of June, you're going to be able to go to your local liquor store and buy your alcohol. Of course, bars and restaurants will stay closed, but at home, you can drink to your heart's content. So that's a big deal there. Cigarettes, on the other hand, stay prohibited.
Right.
And so it's definitely 1-0 to the alcoholics versus the cigarette heads. So that's an interesting one there. The next thing is that people 60 plus must stay home. So that's not a change, but it's kind of a reiteration that if you are in that age group, which is more at risk, try and stay home as best you can. And employees who can work from home must continue to do so. So it's not just free for all now. If you can continue to work home, you should do so. And I think that's going to be the case for a long time. Right? We're going to see a lot of that for probably the rest of the year. Is if you can work from home, if you can make it work, then please do that. The biggest one when it comes to the economy, obviously, is trying to reopen things. So a number of industries are being reopened, and there's too many to mention. But basically, assuming that there's necessary cleaning that takes place at these workplaces, assuming that companies are screening employees in and out, assuming there's all these various bits and pieces in place, which are a whole another set of regulations, then you're going to be able to go back to work in kind of a staggered fashion. So the companies are going to be encouraged to kind of stagger working hours and not have their employees all in the building at the same time, so try and stagger things, and hopefully try and spread the people out, those who need to be in the office versus the ones who need to be at home. So that's quite a big one for the economy. As I've mentioned, restaurants, bars, public gatherings are all still prohibited. Accommodation and domestic business travel is going to be phased in slowly over time as they start to figure out what happens. Professional non-contact sport can resume, but without any crowds in the stands. So anything non-contact can now resume and get started again. And then on to education. Grade 12 and grade 7 are going to start on the 1st of June. And obviously, it's going to be a very different school experience. Lots of social distancing, lots of kind of cleanliness stuff. But they're going to be able to get back to their academic year and try and salvage what is left of the 2020 academic year. So, Chad, that's a lot of stuff that's been changed in South Africa. We're going to have to wait and see what it does to the actual case numbers. Of course, we're going to see a huge increase, but it's whether it can be managed and whether our public health system can actually manage this extra load. If it can't, Cyril says you will go straight back to level 4. So it's up to us as South Africans.
Yeah, it's an interesting move, and I suppose a lot of people have been calling for this for some time already, looking at the low case numbers that you guys have. But there was a lot of speculation that the big cities, Johannesburg and Cape Town, would stay on stricter lockdown measures for some more time, obviously as they are the hubs and that kind of thing. But do you think that speculation was misplaced? The government's obviously gone a different way.
Yeah, it's hard to say because Cyril definitely did mention the big metro areas and he called them hotspots. So he put up put up a map at least and showed all the hotspot cities, but they're all on the same level. And I think the reason, Chad, is because the economic activity is concentrated in those areas, right? So if you're trying to reopen the economy, the majority of that is in places like Cape Town and Joburg and Durban, etc. And so it's hard to balance, again, the economic crisis with the health crisis. And so I think that at the moment, level 3 is going to be across the country, and he's mentioned the hotspot areas and be increased kind of scrutiny on them, lots more police, lots more healthcare workers, etc. But we have to wait and see. I mean, for us here in South Africa, Cape Town is a big problem. Cape Town has more than half of the cases in the country.
Right.
And so in the Western Cape, they're dealing with a lot of big numbers there. And so they've got to think quite differently to some of the more rural areas or some of the other cities around the country. But I think that everyone is kind of looking after their own municipalities for the moment. because there's no interprovincial travel and there's no domestic air travel just yet, I think Cyril's relying on his municipalities in the various areas to focus on their stuff and their numbers and do whatever's needed in those situations. But I think we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Of course, we're gonna have to look at the data over the next couple of weeks and see what happens as we start to ease things. And it is likely that maybe a Joburg or Cape Town will have to go back up a level if the numbers start to get out of hand.
Well, it's nice to see that at least on both sides of our ponds, we're on a fairly similar sort of lockdown at the moment. For a while, I've been feeling guilty that I can go for a run and my friends couldn't. Then it was eased a little bit and they could run within 3 hours of the day. But it's nice that you can now go at any time of the day as well. And obviously for those who have been struggling without being able to have a little bit of alcohol to, ease the pain a little bit, I suppose nice that they can now have that as well. One of the things that I've certainly picked up on in the last little bit is this ongoing debate about masks and when it is appropriate to wear them. A lot of people saying that those who do not wear masks in their own private vehicles are not following the rules. What do you think?
I think it's a little bit silly. It's one of those debates that kind of grabs social media because it's so divisive and so kind of polarizing.
Yep.
I think it's safe to say the science that as long as you look after yourself in your own car, you should be fine. I don't think wearing a mask in your own car is necessary. But certainly as soon as you leave that car and go to public areas, and you have to wear masks. I think South Africa has been very strict on that. So even if you're running, so when I go for a run in the mornings, I take my mask and I run with my mask on. So it's quite strict in that sense.
Yep.
And of course, all public areas, all shops, no shop will let you in without a mask, etc., etc. But in your own car, Chad, I think you should be fine.
Pond across the pond with Barry and Chad.